My name is Riley Patterson, and I'm 22 years old. What happened when my parents found the note I left on the kitchen table Christmas morning is something that completely transformed our family's understanding of love, fairness, and the damage that can be done when gift-giving becomes a public declaration of who matters most. Picture this: my mother discovering my carefully written letter at 7 a.m., her hands trembling as she read words that laid bare 18 years of unequal treatment, while my father stood behind her realizing that their Christmas morning celebration had cost them something far more valuable than the $35,000 car they'd given my brother. You see, that note wasn't just an expression of hurt feelings about receiving discount socks while watching my brother get keys to a brand new BMW. It was a detailed accounting of years of disparate treatment, a goodbye letter from a daughter who had finally accepted that she would never be valued equally in her own family, and most devastatingly, an announcement that I had already moved out while they were sleeping off their Christmas Eve celebration. Before we dive into this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy stories about family dynamics and the moment when patterns of favoritism finally have consequences that can't be ignored. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love connecting with people who understand that sometimes the most powerful statements aren't made in anger, but in the quiet decision to stop accepting treatment that doesn't match the love you deserve. Let me take you back to Christmas Eve, when I was helping set up for our family's annual celebration while trying to ignore the growing dread in my stomach about what the next morning would bring. The living room looked like a Christmas magazine spread: professionally decorated tree, elegant gift arrangements, and two distinct piles of presents that told the story of our family dynamics without any words needed. On one side was my brother Tyler's impressive collection of wrapped boxes in various sizes, clearly representing substantial financial investment. On the other side was my much smaller assortment of gifts, wrapped with equal care but obviously less expensive. This disparity wasn't new, but it had become increasingly pronounced as Tyler and I had gotten older. At 19, Tyler was the family golden child, charismatic, athletic, naturally gifted at everything he attempted, and the clear recipient of our parents' pride and financial generosity. I, on the other hand, had always been the quieter child, the one whose achievements required more effort and generated less enthusiastic family celebration. Good grades came through hours of studying rather than natural brilliance. Athletic participation meant being a dedicated team member rather than the star player. Social activities meant close friendships rather than popular leadership roles. "Riley, can you help me arrange Tyler's gifts?" Mom asked as we did final preparations. "I want them to look perfect for tomorrow morning." I knelt beside Tyler's gift pile, noting the size and weight of boxes that suggested electronics, clothing from expensive stores, and other substantial presents. The largest box was clearly too big and oddly shaped to be anything other than a major purchase. "Mom, what's in the big rectangular box?" I asked, though I was already starting to suspect. "You'll have to wait until tomorrow like everyone else," she said with the kind of excited secretiveness that indicated she was bursting to share news about Tyler's special surprise. I moved to my own gift area and began arranging the smaller packages that represented my Christmas haul. Most were obviously clothing items, books, or small personal accessories, thoughtful gifts that showed my parents knew my interests, but nothing that suggested the level of financial investment Tyler's presence represented. "Your pile looks nice too, sweetheart," Dad said, joining us in the living room. "We found some things we thought you'd really enjoy." "I'm sure I'll love everything," I replied, and I meant it. I wasn't ungrateful for gifts, and I didn't need expensive presents to feel loved. But I also couldn't ignore the obvious difference in how much money and consideration had gone into Tyler's Christmas versus mine. Christmas morning arrived with the traditional Patterson family chaos. Tyler bounded downstairs with the enthusiasm of someone who knew good things were waiting for him, while I followed more quietly, carrying the weight of years of Christmas mornings that had followed this same pattern. "Merry Christmas!" Mom and Dad chorused as we gathered around the tree. The energy in the room was focused on Tyler's excitement and our parents' anticipation of his reactions to their carefully chosen gifts. We opened presents in our usual order, smallest to largest, saving Tyler's mysterious big box for last. I received exactly what I'd expected: a nice sweater, some books I'd mentioned wanting, a gift card to my favorite store, and finally, a package of novelty socks with cats on them that Dad thought were fun and practical. Tyler's gifts were a different story entirely. New AirPods, designer clothes, the latest gaming system, a laptop for college, and then finally, the moment everyone had been building toward. "Tyler, this last one is special," Mom said, practically vibrating with excitement as she handed him an envelope instead of the large box. He opened it to find car keys and a letter that read, "Look outside for the rest of your Christmas surprise." The next 10 minutes were a blur of excitement as Tyler discovered the black BMW sedan sitting in our driveway with a red bow on the hood. Mom and Dad were beaming with pride at their ability to surprise their son with such an incredible gift. Tyler was appropriately amazed and grateful, and I stood there holding my cat socks while watching my family celebrate a $35,000 expression of love for my brother. "Riley, aren't you excited for Tyler?" Mom asked, noticing my quiet observation of the celebration. "Of course. It's an amazing gift. You guys really went all out." "We've been planning this for months," Dad said proudly. "Tyler's worked so hard in school and sports, and he'll need reliable transportation for college next year." Tyler had worked hard, I wasn't disputing that. He'd maintained good grades while playing varsity football and participating in student government. But I had also worked hard. I'd been on the honor roll for 4 straight years, volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend, and managed to save money for college through a part-time job while maintaining my academic performance. The difference wasn't in our effort or achievements. The difference was in how those efforts and achievements were valued and rewarded by our parents. "Well," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice, "I should get ready for Grandma's dinner tonight." I went upstairs to my room and sat on my bed, looking at the gifts I'd received while processing what had just happened downstairs. The cat socks, which probably cost $3.99, represented the financial investment my parents had made in showing me love, while Tyler's BMW represented a $35,000 declaration of how much they valued him. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about what the disparity revealed about how they saw us, how they prioritized us, and what they believed we deserved from them as their children. That evening, during our extended family Christmas dinner, the pattern continued. Tyler's new car was the centerpiece of conversation, with relatives congratulating my parents on their generous gift and Tyler on his good fortune. My achievements, honor roll, volunteer work, part-time job responsibility, were acknowledged politely and briefly before conversation returned to Tyler's exciting present. I spent the evening listening to family members celebrate the generosity shown to Tyler while my contributions to the family and community were treated as afterthoughts. It wasn't intentional cruelty, but it was a clear demonstration of where attention, admiration, and appreciation were focused in our family dynamic. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the house was quiet, I made a decision that had been building for months. I was tired of accepting unequal treatment and pretending it didn't hurt. I was tired of being the understanding daughter who never complained about receiving less consideration than her brother. I was tired of minimizing my feelings to preserve family harmony that was only harmonious if I stayed quiet about the inequality. I sat down at my desk and wrote the most honest letter I'd ever composed, a letter that laid out everything I'd observed and experienced, everything I'd felt and concluded, and everything I'd decided about my future relationship with a family that had shown me exactly how much I mattered relative to Tyler. If you've ever been the family member who received less while being expected to be grateful for anything, type unequal love in the comments. What comes next will show you that sometimes the most powerful response to years of disparate treatment is simply refusing to participate in the dynamic anymore. The letter took me 3 hours to write. I wanted every word to be precise, every observation to be factual, and every conclusion to be impossible to dismiss as emotional overreaction or temporary hurt feelings. "Dear Mom and Dad," I began, "I'm writing this because I've realized that some truths are too important to leave unsaid, and some patterns are too damaging to continue accepting. This morning, Tyler received a $35,000 BMW for Christmas while I received $3.99 socks. But this letter isn't really about the financial disparity, though that disparity is impossible to ignore. It's about what that difference represents in terms of how you see us, value us, and express love for us. For 18 years, I have watched Tyler receive not just more expensive gifts, but more attention, more praise, more investment in his interests and activities, and more celebration of his achievements. When Tyler made varsity football, you threw a party and called relatives to share the news. When I made honor roll for the 4th consecutive year, you said "That's nice, honey," and changed the subject. When Tyler wanted to attend summer sports camp, you found the money without hesitation. When I wanted to attend the volunteer coordinator training program, you said we couldn't afford it and suggested I find something free to do with my time. When Tyler got his first job, you celebrated his work ethic and independence. When I got my job, you worried it would interfere with my grades and questioned whether it was necessary. I have spent years trying to understand what I could do differently to earn the same level of enthusiasm, investment, and celebration that Tyler receives naturally. I've worked harder academically, contributed more to our community, and tried to be the daughter you could be proud of. But I've realized that the problem isn't my performance, it's your perception of our relative worth. Tyler is your favorite child. That's not an accusation, it's an observation supported by 18 years of evidence. And that favoritism has taught me something important about my place in this family. I've learned that I will always be valued less, celebrated less, and invested in less than Tyler, not because of anything I've done wrong, but because something about who I am fundamentally appeals to you less than who he is. This Christmas morning crystallized something I've been avoiding for years. I deserve to be someone's favorite child, even if I'm not yours. I deserve to have my achievements celebrated with the same enthusiasm you show for Tyler's. I deserve to receive expressions of love that reflect genuine excitement about who I am and what I accomplish. Since I will never receive those things in this family, I've decided to stop trying to earn them and stop pretending that receiving less doesn't hurt. By the time you read this letter, I will have moved out of the house. I'm not running away in anger, I'm making a considered decision to remove myself from a dynamic that has been harmful to my self-worth and understanding of what I should accept from people who claim to love me. I'll be staying with my friend Sarah's family, who have generously offered me a place while I figure out next steps. I have money saved from my job, and I'll continue working while finishing my senior year of high school. This isn't about punishing you for favoring Tyler. It's about protecting myself from continuing to internalize the message that I'm worth less than he is. I love both of you, and I love Tyler. But I also love myself too much to keep accepting treatment that teaches me I should expect less from people who are supposed to love me most. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it will require acknowledging how your favoritism has affected me and making genuine changes to how you treat us differently. Until that happens, I need space to remember what it feels like to be valued equally. I hope someday you'll understand that this decision comes from self-respect, not selfishness. Love, Riley. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in an envelope with Mom and Dad written on the front. Then I spent the rest of the night quietly packing my most important belongings into 2 suitcases and a backpack. At 5 a.m., while my parents and Tyler were still sleeping off Christmas Day festivities, I loaded my car with my packed belongings and drove to Sarah's house, where her mother Linda was waiting with hot coffee and the kind of unconditional support I'd been craving from my own family. "Are you sure about this, Riley?" Linda asked as I settled into their guest room. "I'm sure. I can't keep pretending that being treated as less important doesn't hurt. And I can't keep hoping things will change when there's 18 years of evidence that they won't. What do you think will happen when your parents find the letter?" "I think they'll be shocked, because they probably never realized how obvious their favoritism was. They'll probably think I'm overreacting to Christmas presents instead of recognizing the pattern those presents represent." I was right about their shock, but wrong about their ability to recognize the pattern. Sarah's mom woke me at 8:30 a.m. with news that my phone had been ringing constantly for the past hour and a half. I had 17 missed calls from my parents and 12 text messages that ranged from confused to panicked to angry. The most recent text from Mom read, "Riley, come home immediately. We need to talk about this ridiculous letter. You're overreacting to Christmas presents and making a huge mistake." Overreacting to Christmas presents. Even after reading 3 pages of detailed observations about 18 years of unequal treatment, she was reducing my decision to disappointment about receiving socks instead of a car. Dad's text was different. Riley, your mother and I are devastated that you feel this way. Please come home so we can discuss this as a family. We never intended to hurt you. I replied to both, I need space right now. When you're ready to acknowledge the pattern of favoritism I described rather than dismissing my feelings as overreaction, we can talk. Over the next 3 days, I received dozens of calls and texts from my parents, Tyler, and various relatives who had been told different versions of what had happened. The family narrative seemed to be that I had run away over Christmas presents, not that I had made a considered decision to remove myself from a harmful dynamic. The turning point came 4 days after Christmas, when Tyler showed up at Sarah's house asking to talk to me privately. Riley, I read your letter, he said when we sat down in the living room. Mom and Dad showed it to you? They didn't want to, but I insisted after hearing their version of events. I needed to understand what you actually said versus what they were telling people. And what did you think? I think you're right about most of it. I've gotten better treatment, more investment, more celebration of my achievements. I just never thought about how that felt. For you. It's not your fault, Tyler. You didn't ask to be the favorite. Maybe not, but I also never stood up for you when the treatment was obviously unequal. I benefited from their favoritism without questioning whether it was fair to you. What did you say to Mom and Dad? I told them that after reading your letter, I understood why you left. I said that giving me a $35,000 car while giving you $4 socks was so obviously unequal that I was embarrassed for them. How did they respond? They got defensive. They said they love us equally but that we have different needs and interests. They insisted that they've never intentionally favored me over you. Different needs and interests? That's what I said. I told them that needing transportation to college didn't explain 18 years of getting more expensive gifts, more attention, and more celebration of achievements. Tyler's visit was followed by a letter from my parents, delivered the next day. Riley, we've spent the past week reflecting on your letter and Tyler's observations about our family dynamics. We want you to know that we never intended to create the impression that we value you less than Tyler. However, we're beginning to understand that our intentions don't matter as much as the impact of our actions. If you felt less valued, less celebrated, and less supported, then we've failed as parents regardless of what we meant to communicate. We're asking you to come home so we can begin addressing the patterns you've identified. We want to understand how we can rebuild your trust and demonstrate that you are just as important to us as Tyler. We love you more than you know, and we're willing to make changes to prove it. The letter was signed by both parents and included a note from Tyler. I miss having my sister around, and I want to be part of fixing what's been broken. I returned home 2 weeks after Christmas, but not to resume the old dynamic. I returned with conditions: family counseling to address favoritism patterns, equal financial investment in both children's interests and needs, and acknowledgement that 18 years of unequal treatment required more than good intentions to repair. The counseling sessions were difficult but transformative. My parents had to confront how their unconscious biases toward Tyler's personality and achievements had shaped their parenting in ways that were harmful to me and, ultimately, to our family relationships. We always thought Riley was more independent and didn't need as much attention or support, Mom explained during one session. But independence isn't the same as not needing love and recognition, the counselor replied. Riley became independent because she learned not to expect the same level of support Tyler received. Over the following months, my parents made genuine efforts to change patterns that had been established over nearly 2 decades. They celebrated my achievements with the same enthusiasm they showed for Tyler's. They invested equally in our interests and activities. They began treating us as equally important family members rather than assuming Tyler needed more support and attention. The BMW remained Tyler's, but my parents established a college fund for me that matched the car's value, invested in volunteer coordinator training I'd wanted to attend, and began publicly acknowledging my achievements with the same pride they'd always shown for his. Most importantly, they learned that love isn't just about feeling equally toward your children, it's about expressing that love in ways that make each child feel equally valued, supported, and celebrated. The Christmas that had started with such painful inequality became the catalyst for our family learning how to love more fairly, more consciously, and more effectively than we'd ever managed before. Sometimes the most powerful gift you can give yourself isn't staying quiet to keep peace, it's speaking truth that forces everyone to confront patterns they've been too comfortable ignoring. And sometimes the greatest act of self-love is refusing to accept less than you deserve, even from people you love most. What unequal treatment have you accepted to preserve family harmony? What truth have you been afraid to speak because it might cause conflict? Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been the family member who received less while being expected to be grateful, you're not alone. Comment equal love if you believe all children deserve to feel equally valued by their parents. Share this story with someone who needs to know that speaking up about unfair treatment isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories about family dynamics, self-advocacy, and the courage to demand the respect and love you deserve. I'd love to know, should parents treat all children exactly equally, or is it natural that different children receive different types of support based on their personalities and needs? Let me know in the comments. Remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but demanding treatment that reflects your value is an act of self-respect that can transform relationships in ways that benefit everyone.